Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question's to the Prime Minister. The cashless debit card presently restricts 80% of working-age welfare payments in vulnerable communities from being spent on alcohol, drugs and gambling. Will you, Prime Minister, guarantee there will be no increase in the number of drunk and violent acts suffered by women and children when you cancel the card as you've promised?
Order. Members on my right. I give the call to the Minister for Social Services.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for the question, because there has been a lot of rhetoric heard in the debate by the Shadow Minister, but also in the debate last night, but not a lot of evidence. And the evidence is very clear. It was laid out. It was laid out in the ANAO report, and I remind the House that the government did not demonstrate.
The Minister will just resume her seat for a moment. Order. Questions have been heard in silence. Answers will be heard in silence. This is question time and it is answer time as well. I call the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you. And I remind the House that the government was not able to demonstrate that the CDC program was meeting its intended objectives. That is from the ANAO report. But I continued reading the ANAO report and I found some other interesting information in Table 1.2, and that is in 2020, the then former government reduced in the objectives of the Act to actually reference violence and harm and the reduction in trial sites. That was point B, and it removed that actually from the objectives. So in the new objectives, there was no reference to trying to determine whether violence or harm was reducing.
Order. The Minister will just pause. The member for Deakin.
Point of order, Mr Speaker, on relevance. The question was, will the Prime Minister or the Minister in his stead promise that there won't be more violence inflicted on women and children as a result of putting more alcohol and...
The member will resume his seat. The Minister is being completely relevant and referring to the program and the ANO report regarding the outcomes. And I give the call to the Minister, who will be heard in silence.
So in 2015, the former government was then interested in whether or not the cashless debit card reduced violence or harm in the trial areas, but by 2020 they were no longer interested. And why? Why, you might wonder? Well, that is because they could not provide any evidence to suggest there was a reduction of harm and violence in communities. And we've heard a lot from those on the other side about the University of Adelaide report. The University of Adelaide report, and I want to go to the part of the report that talked about safety, crime and family violence, where it said that 60% of CDC participants reported that they did not feel safer since the introduction of the CDC card, and 28%, that's more than 1 in 4 participants, reported their safety had reduced since the introduction of the CDC card. So if we go to the evidence, and ignore the ideological rhetoric from those over, we see that this program did not make a difference when it came to safety and harm. Indeed, what it did for participants is make discrimination normalised in communities, stigma normalised in communities, and of course it had practical problems that meant that people couldn't buy a second-hand fridge because they didn't have enough cash. It meant that families couldn't take their children to the football because they didn't have enough cash. This has had real problems in communities and we are acting to fix it.